Geonosis was a centre of power for the Separatist Alliance during the Clone Wars that hosted numerous battles. However, once the patronage of the CIS was removed, it became an Imperial province under the Galactic Empire. But what was life like on Geonosis under the Empire? Now, we have talked on a previous video about the events that happened on Geonosis following the Clone Wars, and we will be revisiting some of these points to explain how and what happened. So as we know, Geonosis following the Clone Wars wasn't doing too good. They'd backed the losing horse, and much of their great industrial might has now been destroyed by the Republic. Not only this, but a good amount of their queens had also been killed in the conflict. However, unlike if this had happened on another world, it wasn't a complete catastrophe. The Geonosians lived relatively primitive lives, so even without technological amenities, they would continue to survive, relatively unhindered. However, things got worse when the Empire decided to use the world as a base for the construction of the Death Star, and this was pretty smart. Geonosis was in the Outer Rim, far away from the prying eyes of the Senate, which still had some power. And no one really went there. Between the destruction during the Clone Wars and the not very hospitable environment and natives, they were relatively free for interruption. The Imperials also believed that the asteroid ring surrounding the world was rich in resources for the project, however it wasn't very accurate. It's likely the Geonosians mined all of these unused minerals centuries ago. Unfortunately, however, Moff Tarkin, who was overseeing the project, wasn't going to make life easy for the Geonosians. The entire system was likely blockaded and communications were completely cut off. We don't know exactly the extent in which the Geonosians were actually used in the construction of the Death Star, as it was kept in orbit. However, countless slaves and other contractors were shipped in to aid in the project. Tarkin enforced a wall of silence, refusing to let contractors on leave, and blocking all communications of slaves and the native Geonosians to the outside world. Now, eventually Saw Gerrera's partisans managed to get a lead on the project. Despite Tarkin's best efforts, it's impossible for all of these resources the Empire was procuring to just vanish, and this led the partisans to Geonosis. Despite this, he was too late. The Death Star's engines had been completed, and Tarkin had moved it into deep space to avoid prying eyes. Tarkin knew that the Geonosians had seen the Great Battle Station, and he knew that word would spread. Now, he could have kept the system on lockdown, however this was very risky and expensive. The rebels knew Geonosis was in some way relevant to the Empire's master plan, and stopping every single attempt to make contact with the natives would be impossible. So long story short, the Geonosians had to go. Now, conventional warfare on Geonosis, as we've seen, doesn't really work. There's far too many of them, there's too many hives, too many places for them to hide. You could never invade and wipe them out, using conventional methods anyways. So chemical weapons were brought in, and in an event known as the sterilization of Geonosis, nearly all of the insectoid people were killed. The Ghost crew and Saw Gerrera did eventually reach the world and make contact with Click-Clack, a young Geonosian who had somehow survived. He gave them information on the battle station and the massacre that had took place here. He was also in possession of the last ever Geonosian queen egg that we know of. This was meant to ensure that the line of Geonosians would be able to continue, that they would one day be able to rebuild. Now, it would have been nice to say that this is where the story ended for Geonosis, and the people did manage to rebuild. But this was not the case. As we discussed on an older video, the queen was hatched, known as Karina. However, in a brutal twist, Karina was damaged as an egg, and therefore made infertile. Ultimately, the Geonosian line stopped here. However, even if Karina had not been injured, it would likely have all been in vain. Following the Battle of Yavin, Darth Vader returned to the world and butchered the last queen to take her droid factory that she was using to create a brood of B-1 battle droid children. Even the fact that she was infertile did not stop her motherly instincts, so she was treating these B1s as Geonosians, basically. It's likely that with the death of Karina, it marked the Geonosians' extinction. We know that their hive culture meant that they were not commonly spread across the galaxy, and there's no record of any queens ever leaving the world. For this reason, it's very unlikely that the few Geonosians that were not on Geonosis were ever able to reproduce. They were the last of their kind. This may be one of the worst crimes committed by the Empire, not only for its barbarosity, but to wipe out an entire species in such a way is unthinkable. It is always possible that another queen egg did survive and is intact, but its location and who holds it is unknown. But what do you guys think? Do you feel bad for the Geonosians? After all, they were always portrayed as the mindless evil bugs in nearly all of the media. And do you think that there is a chance that the species did find a way to survive? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, share and sub if you did enjoy, as it's really appreciated and it helps the channel grow. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter @TheLoreGuy and tick the bell for regular updates. Thanks again for watching, I do hope that you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.